The one in Massapequa is the 18th episode of the 8th season of Friends. This is directed by Gary Halvorson, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it's a really brilliant episode, definitely one that I really thoroughly enjoy. And I think I can't hear the word Massapequa without hearing Alec Baldwin as Parker saying it. So with this one, I will go through things chronologically. Sometimes with Friends, I will discuss each part of the narrative in turn, but with this one, everything flows really well chronologically, so that just makes the most sense. And this one revolves around Monica and Ross's parents' 35th wedding anniversary. And Monica is going to be giving the speech this year. Usually it's Ross and everybody praises him and loves him, and Monica wants some of that. So that's what's happening with Monica. Phoebe and Parker are still together, and Parker meets everybody, and immediately he knows everybody's names. He had a little joke with Chandler. He's a lot of fun, and I thought it was a really fun way to introduce him to the others. And then the rest of the episode is at the anniversary party, pretty much the rest of the episode. It's a really nice atmosphere, lovely costumes, really, really great. And it turns out that Jack and Judy kind of told everybody that Ross and Rachel were getting married. They told them about the baby, of course, but they also added that they were getting married. And then somebody hands them a check to help them start off their married life together, and they realise that they should lean into this. Initially, they were just going to nod along and not correct anybody, but suddenly they get into the swing of things, particularly Rachel. Parker is then at the event, and he just wants to take a mental picture. And I want to share something here that this episode did for me. I have severe OCD, checking OCD. I lose several hours per day to this. But a few years ago, I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was watching a bit of this episode, and it occurred to me, why don't I take a mental picture? And I don't quite do it as animatedly as Parker does. He holds his hand up in front of his face and he pretends to take a mental picture. But I do. I stop and I look at the thing that I'm checking and I tell myself, I just want to take a mental picture. Click. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes I have to do it a few times. But that episode taught me to do that, and it genuinely helps with my OCD. So a little tip, if anybody else is in the same boat, give it a try. It's not foolproof, but sometimes it can help because you remember taking the mental picture. And I really owe the episode a lot. So it was a really great moment for me. And he's obviously really enthusiastic, but the others are thinking he's a bit too enthusiastic. And Phoebe kind of catches Ross making fun of Parker, which is not a great moment. And we'll come back to those in a moment. We then see Rachel really getting into the swing of things with the wedding story. She's telling this beautiful, elaborate tale, and everybody's eating it up. And then it comes to the proposal story. And Rachel asks Ross to tell it, and she's really excited to hear it. And he tells this really beautiful proposal story. And then she mentioned the ring being the size of her fist. And then it occurred to me, she's not wearing her wedding rings. Why has nobody thought that? Why did she draw attention to the ring when she's not wearing her wedding ring? Because obviously she doesn't have a wedding ring because they're not married. So I think maybe they shouldn't have mentioned the ring, because it then kind of pointed out an issue with this. By mentioning the ring, people are instantly going to look at her finger, to look at this ring, and it's not there. Granted, not everybody wears their engagement ring once they're married, but a lot of people do. So I thought that was maybe a bit of an oversight, but nevertheless, it was still an entertaining moment. And then Phoebe has realised that Parker is, he's maybe a little bit too enthusiastic. But then they go and do the bunny hop. And then it's time for Monica's speech, her toast. And she basically tried to make everybody cry. And she just really brought down the mood. And it was miserable. And nobody gave her a response. So then Ross gave a toast because his parents were like, aren't you going to speak on our 35th wedding anniversary? So he does. He gives a toast. It's very brief and to the point. And he gets a lot of praise for it, which obviously is much to Monica's annoyance. And then Phoebe and Parker are alone. Phoebe's going to break up with him. And initially she tells him, why don't we play a game? The who can stay quiet, the longest game. And Parker says, or Jenga. Because they could just magic up a Jenga set out of nowhere. He didn't really think that through. And they decide to play this game. And Parker instantly declares that he loses. Now Jenga. Again, don't know where they're getting the Jenga game from, but nevertheless, that's when Phoebe decides to break up with him, and she basically said he's too happy. And I felt genuinely really bad for Parker. Yes, on the one hand, being around that positivity 24/7 as a pessimist would drive me insane. But actually, it's beautiful. Why can't we all be like Parker? Why can't we all see the positives in the world instead of focusing on the negatives? For example, when they were in traffic, he decided to say they were fairy lights rather than all of the headlights or the tail lights. And that's beautiful. What's the harm? But yeah, that would get really, really annoying. So I felt really bad for him. But at the same time, I can understand why Phoebe wouldn't want to be around that and that kind of attitude all of the time. And we end the episode with Ross and Rachel, and Ross explained to Rachel that that's how he was going to propose when they were together. And it's a very sweet moment between both of them, but also heartbreaking because it's what could have been. In a way, it's almost easier to watch Ross and Rachel when they're not getting along. Because when we have moments like this and Ross pats her stomach, obviously the baby, and when we see these moments, that's a look at what could have been. It's difficult. Whereas when they're arguing, it's like, okay, fine, you're not meant to be together. But we have moments like this that are just so beautiful. And you just want to smash their heads together and say, why can't you realize you're meant to be? So it's a lovely scene. Oh, and then we do end with Ross making Monica cry because he said all of the right things to her as well. So it's a great episode. I think Parker is a delightful character. And as I said, he took a mental picture and it genuinely helps me with my OCD. So that, for me, is one of the strongest takeaways from Friends. As I said, it's not foolproof. It doesn't work every time. But it's a tactic that helps me to realize, well, I remembered taking a mental picture. And when I was taking the mental picture, I was obviously studying that thing intently to confirm it was fine. And sometimes it can quicken the time I spend on my OCD issues. So it's worth a try. If you have similar issues, I'd say give it a go. You never know. It could be really beneficial. And I'm so thankful to the show for giving me that little trick. Everything else in the episode, great as well. So the one in Massapequa, I think it's safe to say, is a really delightful episode of Friends.